Hey friends, as promised, we have finally gotten around to creating a video of our cutout sugar cookie recipe, and we are going to post the recipe in the description here. We are starting off with a cup of butter, which is going to be 2 sticks, and a cup and a half of granulated sugar. We're going to pop that in the mixer and mix that on low until it gets nice and fluffy. While that's mixing up, we're going to go ahead and start sifting out our dry ingredients. Our dry ingredients consisting of 4 cups of all-purpose flour. We'll sift that partially down, and then we'll move into adding the rest of the dry ingredients, which are 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of cream of tartar, and 4 teaspoons of baking powder. There are a lot of misconceptions about using baking powder in a no-spread cookie recipe. We haven't had any issues or found that to be the case with ours. We actually think a lot of that comes from the confusion of baking soda versus baking powder. Baking soda will most certainly give you spread, but we find that baking powder gives a nice lift and tenderness to our cookie. Now we're going to go back to our wet mixture. We're going to check that to see that it's nice and fluffy. Well, we're going to turn off the mixer and then see that that's a nice and fluffy consistency. It is, so we're going to put that mixer back on low, and we're going to start adding in our wet ingredients. Those wet ingredients being 3 medium to large size eggs and a tablespoon of vanilla. Now don't come at us, but we do crack and put our eggs directly into the mixer while it's mixing. That works for us. It might not work for others. If you feel the need to do so, just crack those eggs in another container and add them that way. We'll also go back to that tablespoon of vanilla. You can actually add in a dash of something else along with that vanilla, or you can totally change it out for a different flavor entirely. Now we're going to start taking that dry mixture, sifted mixture, and we're going to start spooning that in. We're using a 1/3 cup scoop just to scoop it in and allow it a little bit of time to mix in. Periodically, we'll go in with our rubber spatula, cut that mixer off, and scrape down the sides of that bowl just to make sure that everything is getting nice and incorporated. Once we've got it scraped down, we'll put the mixer back on and continue to scoop in our sifted ingredients until we are out of the sifted ingredients and they are well incorporated. Now, because we didn't want to cut this video and we wanted to leave it intact for those that are visual learners, this is a little bit of a process, and we do have to continue to scrape down those sides. So while we've got some video time to kill, we will also say that you do not necessarily have to use a mixer to make this recipe. Most of the time we actually mix this recipe by hand because we tend to do a lot of our baking at night and don't want to disturb the household. So what we'll do is we'll just throw those ingredients in a bowl, glove up, and knead everything by hand until it's well incorporated. The other thing that we will also mention that this is not the only sugar cookie recipe out there. There are plenty to be found, and we won't even say that this is the best sugar cookie recipe out there, but this one is the best for us, and we have had great results from it. This isn't the actual recipe that we started with. We've tried a ton of recipes along our cookie journey and have actually combined a lot of them into one recipe to make one that worked best for us and best for our customers. Now, once we've got that sugar cookie dough all mixed up, we're going to glove up, we're going to clean off that whisk attachment, and we're going to move this cookie dough over into another container. We like to go in and make all of our batches of dough at one time so we can just go ahead and roll it out and pop it in the freezer for the week. Standardly, 1 batch isn't enough to cover the orders for the week. This week is actually more of a cake week, so we're only going to make 2 batches, but we do need that mixer to mix up the second batch, so we're going to go ahead and throw all that dough into another bowl so we can mix up another batch of the dough. And you can see we're going in with that rubber spatula, which we did fail to mention in our beginner cookie decorating supply list video, but it most certainly does require an honorable mention. We love our rubber spatulas, especially when we're going in there and getting out dough, icing, buttercream, you name it. We just feel that we waste a lot less when we're able to go in and get all of it out with that. And here is our first batch of sugar cookie dough. We're going to come back with batch number 2. Here we are taking out batch number 2. We're going to go ahead and move that over into that same bowl as batch number 1. We'll then slide that bowl aside, and we're going to start rolling out the dough. So we've got our first sheet of parchment paper down on the counter. We're going to throw some dough on there, pat it down some. We're going to come in with another layer of parchment paper, and we're going to take our adjustable rolling pin with those rings on the side, and we're going to roll out from the center, rolling towards the edges. You will see us periodically coming in with a knife. We do that for several reasons. One of the reasons being that we don't want to go beyond the parchment paper and get our rolling pin dirty. Another reason being that we don't want our adjustable rings to roll through the dough. We want to allow enough room for us to roll over it without rolling in it. And then the most important reason being that we're going to throw this into an airtight container to freeze for us to bake later. There are several reasons why we freeze our dough. A being we usually don't feel like baking it after we've rolled out several batches. But the most important reason being that we find we get a nice cleaner cutting into frozen dough, and we don't warp our cookie design moving it to the baking sheet when we're cutting them out. Now here we are just taking off our ring to show that it is a 6 millimeter thickness. We found that to be our happy place as far as cookie thickness versus the icing on top and the sweetness level there. Once we've got it rolled out, we're going to move that sheet over into our airtight container and continue to roll out dough. Once we've got all that dough rolled out, we'll pop that into the airtight container and we'll just pull the dough as we need it. We will pull it, cut it, and bake it in a preheated oven of 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 9 to 12 minutes, depending on the size and shape that we've used for that particular order. We'll also be working on editing our royal icing recipe video. Until then, if you need any help or have any questions, most certainly reach out. Until the next time, happy baking, friends. And this was recorded a little later, but we did want to show you the finished product.